computers pay. He grinned happily at this thought and stroked the keyboard again. Terry Franklin had become a spy for the money. He had volunteered. He had made his decision after reading everything he could lay his hands on about espionage. Only then had he devised a plan to market the classified material to which he had access as a Navy enlisted computer specialist. He had thought about the plan for months, looking for holes and weighing the risks. There were risks, he knew, huge ones, but that was the reason the compensation would be so high. And, he assured himself repeatedly, he enjoyed taking risks. It would add spice to his life, make a boring marriage and a boring job tolerable. So he recruited himself. One Saturday morning 5 years ago, Terry Franklin walked into the Soviet embassy in Washington. He had read that the FBI kept the embassy under constant surveillance and photographed everyone who entered. So he wore a wig, false mustache, and heavy mirror-like sunglasses. He told the receptionist he wanted to see an intelligence officer. After a 45-minute wait, he was shown into a small windowless room and carefully searched by the receptionist, a muscular, trim man in his early 30s. A half-hour later, he was convinced he was photographed during this period by an unseen camera. A nondescript man in his 50s wearing a baggy suit had entered and occupied the only other chair. Without a word, Franklin displayed his green Navy ID card, then handed the man a roll of film. The man weighed it in his hand as Franklin removed the sunglasses, wig, and mustache. The Russian left the room without speaking. Another half-hour passed, then another. No doubt he was again photographed. It was almost noon when Baggy Suit returned. He smiled as he entered and shook Franklin's hand. Could he examine the ID card? Where was Franklin stationed? When had he exposed the film? Why? The Russian's English was good but slightly accented. "Money," Terry Franklin had said. "I want money. I have something to sell and I brought you a free sample, hoping you might want to buy more." Now, as Franklin worked the computer keyboard, he thought back to that day at the embassy. It had been the most momentous day of his life. 5 years and 2 months after that day, he had $540,000 in cash in a storage locker in McLean, Virginia, under an assumed name, and no one was the wiser. He was going to quit spying when that figure reached $1 million. And when his enlistment was up, he was going to walk out on Lucy and the kids and fly to South America. It was typical of Terry Franklin that he intended to delay his departure until he received his discharge. When he entered his new life, he would go free, clean, and legal, with no arrest warrants anywhere. He would go in his fake identity. Petty Officer First Class Terry Franklin, the college kid from Bakersfield who had knocked up Lucy Southworth in the back seat of her father's station wagon at a drive-in movie, married her, then joined the Navy. That Terry Franklin would cease to exist. It was a nice bundle. $540,000 plus $30,000 for these 3 discs. A lot of money, but not enough. He wasn't greedy, but he had to have a stake big enough so that he could live on the interest. He had been very, very careful. He had made no mistakes. He had never spent a penny of the money. The spying was going smooth as clockwork. These Russians, they were damn good. You had to take your hat off to them. They had never called or spoken to him after that last meeting in Miami almost 3 years ago, right after he received orders to the Pentagon. The operation was slick, almost foolproof, he reflected as he inserted the 3rd disc. The calls always came on an evening when his wife was out, sometimes with her bowling league, sometimes at a friend's house. The phone rang once, and if he picked it up, there was no one there, merely a dial tone. 1 minute later, it rang again, once. Then, a minute after that, it rang 1, 2, 3, or 4 times. The number of rings that 3rd time was the message. He was to check dead drop 1, 2, 3, or 4, and he was to do it as soon as possible. He usually left the house immediately, cruised for at least an hour in his car to ensure he wasn't being followed, then headed for the dead drop. And the information would be there. Spelled out in block letters on the back of an empty, torn cigarette pack would be the file name he was to photograph, the classified computer codes necessary to gain access,